What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Ham Radio Crash Course. Welcome to Saturday. You got a fun stream. There's going to be lots of discussion on this one, I can already tell. Lots of comments in the comments. Thanks for coming on out on the YouTube side of the house. Appreciate you doing so. Enjoy the memes as we kick things off. We'll get started in a second. Alrighty, how's it going, everybody? I am Josh, KI6NAZ. Hope you're having a good week and a good weekend. The bands are a little trash, I noticed. So a little tough to get some contacts. I'm on 40 meters right now, and it's real bad. So I'm hoping things change, particularly for the after chat, which again, we'll be doing the after chat over on Discord, and the link is in the description. You can join us over there. It is both a text chat and a voice chat, and we take questions live after this live stream, which generally runs about an hour. I am Josh, KI6NAZ, and this is the Ham Radio Crash Course, where we try and talk about, obviously we come towards, bringing people into the hobby. We feel that keeping the hobby strong with new members and keeping the current active members involved and engaged is important too. So we try to look at ham radio from all points of view and try to bring new and interesting things to you that we can have fun with. The upper left SPT, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. He says, Josh, I passed my tech exam on Wednesday and wanted to say, thank you. Your channel helped a lot and made a hobby for me. Well, that's the whole point of it. It's a great hobby with many things to offer. It is a deep hobby. It really is deep as you want to go. The rabbit hole is quite long, and it'll take you to new and interesting things that you probably didn't know about before. And so hopefully, I can introduce you to some of those new things. Lots of people in the chat. Thanks so much for coming out. I see Mike in there. How you doing, Mike? Kate MRD. Wes, how's it going, Wes? Haven't seen Wes in a little while. Philip Muth, Jeeper Creeper. Hey, Jeeper Creeper, thanks for listening to the podcast. I heard your comment earlier. And yeah, my wife and I have a podcast. It's the Ham Radio Crash Course. Wherever you pod, just search for it, and we should be there. So, okay, what are we talking about today? Well, we're going to be talking about amateur radio acronyms and hopefully demystifying some of them. Also talking about some things that aren't actually acronyms, that there's sometimes little bit of hard feelings that sometimes people have preconceived notions about, well, you should never use this as an acronym, etc., etc. So, we're going to have some fun, and hopefully you'll all participate with some of your own acronyms, because I know there's no way that I'm going to hit them all. So, you understand how it goes. With that said, let's hit some of the news, because we do have some pretty interesting stories to talk about this week. First and foremost, if you're interested in supporting the channel, my wife does run our merch store, and a lot of the designs that we cook up are actually from you all. I happen to be wearing my favorite, the Resonate, Radiate, Propagate shirt. That was kind of a joke that came out of the podcast. We still have our baby onesie. I'm the result of good propagation, which I think is hilarious. So if you're interested in that, you got a family or friend that's having a child and maybe an amateur radio enthusiast, consider picking one of those up. Also, if you are interested in getting your license, you want to test, you want to find a place that you can test, we're doing it online. It's all available online now. And you can actually go to www.w8wot.us to schedule a testing for yourself or whomever that wants to get their amateur radio license. And that's run by Chris, W8WOT, who happens to be one of the moderators and admins on the Ham Radio Crash Course. So thanks, Chris, for putting that together. All right. So this is a really cool story. And this came about on the Ham Radio Crash Course Facebook page. I'm just going to put it there, and I'll read it. My daughter and I were hiking down in the Grand Canyons, and we went a bit too far down the South K-Bab Trail before we turned around to head back up. We were 3 miles in and 2,040 feet below the South Rim, that's a good climb. That meant we'd be back to the top 4 hours later than we told my wife. I needed to get a don't worry text to Mommy. Guess what wasn't going to work? I could guess. I'm guessing cell phones. There is a decent cell service around the canyon, but hiking down into it wiped that out. I could have called her, but on my FTM 400 that's in the truck she was driving around, but she has no license. Then I remembered, soon after arriving at our camp spot, I checked aprs.fi and saw that there is... You got to go back inside. I'm doing the live stream, please. You got to go back inside. Please go inside.
Charging for hours.
You have to go inside. You have to go inside. I can't do this right now. I should probably mention... With that said, I should probably mention, Leia had her COVID vaccine, her second one yesterday, and it took her out. She is out of commission. So I will continue. Then I remembered, boop, 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 boop. Where is it? I lost my place completely. Oh, yeah, I checked aprs.fi and saw there is a digipeater and iGate on the south rim. APRS to the rescue. With my trusty FT2DR that's always in my hiking pack, I was able to send a text to her phone using SMSGTE. Just at the same time, she was starting to send the "I'm worried, where are you" text, which is, of course, I wasn't getting. She received his call sign back at the top of 4 o'clock. Was it a life-saving situation? No. Is it a problem to have a wife freaking out for hours about her daughter down in the canyon? Heck yes. Ham radio geek to husband of the year at light speed, my friend. So great story. Thank you very much for sharing that. And that was from KE0VIM. Great story. And another applicable, just doesn't have to be an emergency situation, but that was, the difference between having a night that could have been very stressful and people possibly upset. So good work. Good on you. Okay, April 18th is World Amateur Radio Day. The link is in the description. You guys can check it out. I thought it was interesting that the slogan this year is Amateur Radio, home but never alone. So I thought that was kind of cool. All right. There was a bit of an update I guess it's going into effect, this proposed changes in commission rules regarding human exposure to radio frequency electromagnetic fields. We're not going to go into this deeply or anything like that, but I do want to mention a couple of quotes that I've captured, and this was from comments that were picked up from the ARRL RF Safety Committee. If you read this, and again, it is linked in the description, you can check this out. For most amateurs, the major difference is the removal of the categorical exclusion for amateur radio, which means that ham station owners must determine if they either qualify for an exemption or must perform a routine environmental evaluation, said Greg Lappin, N9GL, chair of the ARRL RF Safety Committee and a member of the FCC Technological Advisors Council. Basically what that means is the FCC is changing how and how often we as amateurs have to perform an environmental test, an environmental evaluation. And this is within the realm of where is your RF going, at what frequency, and how much power. Are there people close by? Do you have literally people that are living right next to a wall where you're transmitting? All those things need to be considered when you are running your amateur radio station. Obviously, I did a video about cooking a hot dog, and this is kind of in line with that, why you may want to do that. So I linked this in the description as well, so you can check that out. All right. Thanks so much again for coming out. I see we got a lot of people in the chat. Thanks for, 370 people. That's pretty good. Thanks for that. Okay, so what are we talking about today? We are talking about demystifying ham radio acronyms. This is a topic that comes up a lot. People are always asking, hey, can you do a video on just explaining some of these acronyms? Because some of them can be confusing, or, maybe there's a history there in some cases that we don't understand. So, this is hopefully going to answer some of those questions, and it'll be a good video later on the back end that people might come around and actually take a look at it and help them out when it comes to learning some of these acronyms. So before we do that, I'm going to crack open my beer. Today I have an Arrogant Bastard Ale. I don't know the last time I've had one of these. It's been a very long time. Many times people argue that Stone is kind of like, was one of the craft beers or micro brews, at least back in the day, that got them into these kind of beers. It's been a long time for me. I'm doing the live stream. Can you please close the door?
Where's the iPad?
I don't know. Close the door. Close the door, please.
You're the last person who had it. I'm on the dog.
Come. Ay, sorry about that. Literally, I just feel bad for Leia because she's the one that has to go through all of this pain of full body ache. She's got a fever right now. She has chills. Please close the door. I can't fix the switch. I can't fix it. Close the door. I don't know how to fix it. Close the door. I can't do it right now. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to cut these portions out of the show. All right, so what are we talking about? Acronyms. Technical hobbies demand acronyms to make time speaking about them more efficient. We use acronyms to take larger terms and break them down to just the chunk that you need for reasons like, imagine how long it would take to take a simple point if we had to spell it all out. It would take forever. But we do need to explain them, and so hopefully that's what this is going to do. And I have to get this kid out of here. Okay. Nintendo Switch, man. Okay. So general terms. We're going to start off slow and then build up. Yeah, the kids are lids. Daddy fixed the Switch. Literally, we've been playing around with that thing for the last 2 hours. I told them it has to charge, and they keep taking it off of the charger, putting it back, taking it off, putting it back. So I apologize. I need a sip of beer. It's Rich. Our Rich says, "Hey Josh, put your little ham on live stream. Maybe that'll tire them out." It's 2, and they're upset about completely unrelated things. So general terms. We'll start off small and we'll build our way up. RF is radio frequency. So if I'm referring to RF or I'm saying radio frequency or RF radiation, stuff like that, that's where you would use that term. SWL is a shortwave listener, not necessarily an amateur radio operator, but somebody who listens to shortwave radios. An OP is an operator. Now ham. Ham gets used as an acronym a lot. Some people think that it should be all capitalized. It's not. It is just ham. It's like capital H if you're using it in the front of a sentence or part of a title, but it is not an acronym of any kind. With that said, there are people who are way too serious about using it as an acronym. When people use it as an acronym, it shouldn't be at all. Some will chastise you for having used it like that. Just tell them to lighten up, have fun. You can listen to what they're saying because it is actually not an acronym, but that's just an FYI for some of you that's a little new. I'm sure I missed some acronyms in this entire thing. There are thousands. There's probably literally thousands of acronyms that are ham related. But here's a good set, at least what I think are important, and that some of you should know. So breaking things down, let's just start with HTs. There's a ton of acronyms just on the face of a Baofeng here. By the way, HT stands for handy talkie, and that goes back towards the Motorola days of World War II, when they had this big, huge phone thing that they would carry around. The first handhelds were called handy talkies. We still use the term HT, but largely it just means handheld. Okay. We're also going to talk about mobile radios, base station radios, HF antennas, propagation terms. There's a litany of things that we're going to cover. So let's keep it easy for those starting out with handheld. If your radio has a V or a VFO in the front of it, and by the way, some of these terms are going to be universal for whether it's a mobile radio or an HF radio, base station, you name it. VFO is a variable frequency oscillator. Its job is to change the frequency, which allows you to move up and down the band that you're operating in. HTs have this, mobile radios have this, HF radios have it. Sometimes there is an M or an MR button, which is a memory record, or memory channel. Sometimes, if you have a frequency you like, or you're trying to load like a repeater, you might key in the VFO to a certain frequency or use the keypad to type it in. Add a PL tone, which we'll talk about that. You'll use an offset for frequency, and then save it to a memory channel. That way, once you load up all these memory channels, you can quickly cycle through them. TXP or TXPWR is transmit power. Literally the wattage that your radio is putting out to make a contact. And that's universal. That could be something that's going to be on a HT or on a mobile or HF radio. SQL is squelch, and squelch is basically the noise threshold. When a signal comes in, if it's higher than the squelch limit, the squelch will open, your speaker will turn on from a functional standpoint, and you'll be able to hear the signals coming in. TDR is dual watch, or sometimes it's DR. Dual watch is when you have a radio that allows two input streams, or either two independent receivers that can receive on two frequencies at the same time, or one radio that has the ability to kind of monitor both and switch between them really quickly. And then when the first one comes in with a signal, it'll favor that one until the signal stops and then go back to switching very quickly, listening. So that's generally what dual watch is. So for handhelds continued, CTCS, if you've ever heard of that, that is continuous tone coded squelch. And that is what repeaters use to, like a reverse squelch. Instead of it just being give me any signal and I'll open the squelch and let you talk through the repeater, be amplified in our antennas and transmit wherever it goes. You use this to send in a sub-audible tone from your radio. That tone is received by the repeater. The repeater goes, that's the frequency I'm supposed to be listening to, or the hertz signal, and boom, it opens the squelch and you're able to hear. Digital coded squelch is kind of similar from a working standpoint. It allows the radio to tune out certain signals that you didn't really want to listen to or tone out. PTT is push to talk. It's the button on the side of the radio. BCL is busy channel lockout, and that basically prevents the radio from transmitting when it knows there is a strong signal already transmitting. Oh, did I skip Vox? I skipped Vox. Voice operated switch. Instead of having to PTT, you can just talk and it turns the radio on and transmit. Sorry about that. Thanks for mentioning it in the chat. BCL, I mentioned that channel lockout. So basically what that means is you're not going to step on somebody. Have you ever experienced when you're on a repeater and two people are talking at the same time? You'll hear one major station that is taking kind of ownership, and they call that the capture effect of the repeater. They're transmitting into the repeater. They've got the bigger system or bigger signal, but then there's somebody else underneath it, and you kind of hear a kind of noise. A BCL would basically have your radio not be able to transmit if there was somebody that was keyed up at the same time as you. But that's not at the same time. Like if you keyed up at the exact same time, it makes it difficult. Also, some of them are less nuanced than that, and it doesn't allow them to actually know what your offset is. So this can be hit or miss. Sometimes it's not worth the effort. FMW, which you're going to see on Yaesu radios, stands for Function Memory Write. This is a multifunction button that is for writing channels and for getting into like the menu system, a bit deeper in the menu system. BCN TX can sometimes mean beacon transmit. BCN is generally the beacon portion of that. You'll see that on some radios, particularly those that run APRS. All right, so mobile radios, again, a lot of these terms are the same, but I do have mobile radios, and sometimes they have different buttons on them. Case in point, this is a 2730, a Yaesu ICOM 2730, and it has a MONI button, and then underneath that it says dupe. Well, so what does that mean? MONI generally means monitor, and you can see that on Baofangs, other HTs. What it is when you click it, it will remove the squelch or whatever you have on the radio as far as controlling the audio output, and you will be able to hear just unadulterated RF, what's coming into the radio for whatever mode you're running in. When you have it in dupe, that's duplex, and specifically that generally means the crossband repeat capability, where you transmit in with VHF, and that's an acronym we'll get to, and it transmits out on UHF. That's a duplex functionality. Here's another mobile radio. This is a Yaesu FTM 400. It has a series of buttons as well, like one there. It says D and X. This is digital, or in this case, wires X. Digital is another term set we'll talk about in a bit, but there's usually a button on these different types of digital radios that will take it out of frequency modulation, FM mode, and put it into a digital mode. Usually each brand has their own digital mode that they work off of, and so this is the Yaesu one. It's the D and the X, which allows you to change into the digital mode or push it into a wires X control. Paul Garber, thank you for the super chat, says Leia will feel better. She's making spike proteins. The worse the reaction, the better the protection. Still alive from NJ, New Jersey, W2RIF. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Paul. Display, in the case of again, Yaesu radios, some radios also have a DISP, is basically a control to change the look of the main screen. So this is a digital display. It's an LCD panel. If you click that display button, it'll cycle through looking at your GPS information, where you're currently located or what GPS signals you're picking up. There's a myriad of things attached to it, but it is an acronym, just so, well, kind of an acronym or an abbreviation. DR for D-Star radios stands for digital repeater or D-Star repeater mode. This is seen on pretty much all the ICOMs that run D-Star, but this also includes, nowadays with the 705, the ability to use this for analog repeaters. In fact, one of the best ways to do memory programming on the IC705, the ICOM IC705, is to use this DR control mode, this DR mode. All right, jumping into HF radios. A lot of different terms here with the HF, and we're going to start expanding this a bit into more information about bands and modes of operation and that kind of stuff. But we'll start out with the physical box. Sometimes it's easiest if you just understand the physical box, then you can build upon that. So AGC is automatic gain control, and you can't see it. You can. Nope, I've got the wrong screen on to show you AGC. Bummer. So AGC, automatic gain control, adjusts the device to keep. Basically, it's a device that keeps the audio levels constant. If you are doing digital modes, you want a fast on-off cycle. You want the AGC to drop immediately after the signal drops, so your computer isn't taking in more information and trying to process it. ATT often stands for attenuator, and that's there to basically attenuate, knock down a large signal that prevents basically receiver overloading. Oftentimes, people refer to a receiver as a front end of a radio. It's the first stop for the signals to come in, so it's often referred to as the front end. If you apply an attenuator, it will keep that front end from overloading. This is often seen on some of the lower bands I've experienced, where you have like a big booming signal on 40 meters. Throw the attenuator on it, level that out a little bit, and you stop getting that overload, which some of you may experience on 40 meters. On the 7300, for instance, can get overloaded. I've seen that happen before in case of very, very large, loud signals. So HF radios continued. TXCO, temperature compensated crystal oscillator. If you have a radio that has this or calls that out, it's generally a way to prevent the radio from randomly drifting, as it does not have a good stable time source. Time sources allow the radio to keep its frequency without drifting. And sometimes you won't know it's drifting. It would be seen on those that are receiving your signals. You'll appear off of the main frequency that you've actually tuned up on your radio. This happens a lot on some of the older radios that haven't warmed up yet. Oh, Leia's up. I'm glad Leia's awake. She's been out a little while. So that's good to see her in the chat. So a TXCO is something that's valuable for keeping a time source. A lot of times now, for some of these SDR radios, they'll actually use GPS signal as a time source, which can be helpful too. RIT stands for Receive Independent Tuning. What this does is accommodate or account for drift that some of these older radios can have. How this is used: when you're on a center, a frequency where you believe the QSO is happening, this call that's happening, and let's say that station starts to kind of like drift a couple of kilohertz off of you. Well, you can use RIT to move the receiver down, but not move your transmit down. And that allows you to keep having a QSO without having to move your radio, because that would change your transmit frequency, which they might not be able to hear, to follow along. All right, so the big stuff. Now we're getting into some of the more nitty-gritty. Radio bands and propagation acronyms. Tons of acronyms here. HZ is Hertz. which is cycles per second. So many hertz is the cycles per second we use. And that can be represented by stacking, 10 to the power of 3 is kilohertz, and then megahertz, and then gigahertz. So at a certain point, we stop talking hertz. For HF radio, we talk kilohertz and megahertz, and then all the way up until you get to VHF, UHF, when you start to get into the gigahertz space, which is right there. So long wave, LW, is all frequency, the frequency space. Now we're talking about the radio frequency spectrum. Okay, not to get too confusing there, but 0 to 300 kilohertz is considered long wave. This is lower than shortwave or HF amateur radio. It's below that point. Medium wave is considered 530 through 1700 kilohertz, which is represented by MW. That is where you will find AM broadcast stations, medium wave. Shortwave comes in. Now you're getting higher frequency. Shortwave comes in, SW, from the 3 megahertz to 30 megahertz space. And I will say that this is there's a bit of adjustment and a bit of sliding up and down because amateurs do have access to lower bands, lower than 3 megahertz of operation. We have 160. 160 is the 3 megahertz space. We got a new one. It's 2200, I think. 2200 or 24 or 2300. Can't remember exactly, but it's lower than 3 megahertz. So that would go beyond the shortwave space. Now, HF, which I've been using that term a lot, stands for high frequency. And that is generally, but there are the exceptions I just gave, encompassed by the shortwave radio space. So all the shortwave spaces are 3 to 30 megahertz. That takes you from 160 meters all the way up to 10 meters. Then you start getting into the VHF space, which is where 6 meters comes into play. And then VHF 2-meter band, and then you go to 70 centimeters, which is a part of the UHF ultra frequency. And again, those go from VHF is 30 to 300 megahertz. UHF ultra high frequency is 300 megahertz to 3 gigahertz. And then super high frequency is 3 gigahertz to 30 gigahertz. Now, there is another step. There's actually a couple more steps. There's EHF after that, which is extremely high frequency, and so on and so forth, until you start ionizing your body with radiation, and we don't play into that space in the amateur radio world. Propagation terms. Who thought I would mention the muff? Dear podcast listeners that are watching me right now, the muff is the maximum usable frequency. What do we use this for? Well, you're looking at a picture of a muff chart. The muff chart shows us where between 2 points of whatever, wherever you want to make a QSO. Let's say I'm in California, I'm in Cerritos, California, and I want to talk to somebody in Maine. Well, if you can see, there's a horizontal kind of bar, a horizontal strip that kind of goes along the country, and there's a 14 there in the middle. The muff, the maximum usable frequency, is 14 megahertz for communication between Cerritos, California, and Maine. If I wanted to talk to South America, well, we actually cross through a couple of different muffs. It could be 14 meters. It could be all the way up to 30 meters. And so you do have a little bit of space to play with. I did capture this earlier today, and the bands are kind of meh. Joe Cup, thank you for the $7.62, my favorite super chat, for something to help Leia feel better. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Joe Cup. She is in the chat, though, so thank you, Leia, for coming on out. The lowest usable frequency is the distance between 2 points, the lowest frequency that's possible for making a QSO. And then the SFI is the solar flux index, and it's the amount of solar spots on the Earth-facing sun. So we actually, move around the sun. The sides of the sun that we see will change, and the sunspots we see are calculated, and the value we're given is the solar flux index. This map is a fantastic map. It's available at prop.kc2g.com. Great, really, really good page there. So go check that out. And you can leave this up on your page. In fact, let's see what the time has gone by. I think that we have a change in the frequency space. Where is it? Did I lose it? Where did my muff chart go? I'll pull it up right now because I'm actually curious what has changed in. Yeah, so we've got a totally different view. Let me show you what this looks like. That's the wrong one. Oh, that's the wrong one. There it is. So that's the muff. Now you can see that the higher frequency that was over South America, the higher frequency, 30 megahertz, that type of stuff, has started to move to the east or to the west, depending on how you look at it, as the day-night cycle is passing overhead. So they're losing the higher frequencies as that mound there in the middle, which is the night cycle, day-night cycle, is coming overhead. So you start to lose that as it goes over. Hope that was helpful. And where'd the chat go? There it is. Okay. There's sound. Refresh. Refresh your screen. Okay. So let's talk about radio modes. So we've mentioned radio functions on the radio, different frequencies, different types of propagation information. Now we'll talk about the modes that you will then apply your RF to then make contacts on those different bands, that different band space. CW is continuous wave, which is the mode that we use to transmit Morse code. CW isn't Morse code. It is generally just a 500 kilohertz wide or hertz wide sine wave of sound, of like 700 hertz, the sound, the audio sound for that sine wave. And you're just keying it on and off. That keying on and off is what allows you to transmit CW, Morse code. See, I just did it. Allows you to transmit Morse code. So you use Morse code to transmit. I'm killing myself. You use CW, the mode on your radio, to transmit Morse code. There, I got it. It's a subtle distinction, but it's worth knowing so that you can handle, when people start using it in different ways. Okay, AM is amplitude modulation, which is a voice mode. I add distinction here for these voice modes. This was pretty much the first voice mode. It's still in use for broadcast radio stations today. We mentioned that it exists down in the medium wave portion of the radio spectrum. You'll hear SSB a lot. SSB is single sideband. There are two sidebands. There is an upper and a lower sideband. This is a voice mode that is predominantly used in HF radio. It's what most of the contacts are made on voice these days. And how it is done is you take AM. AM has a carrier right in the middle and two side lobes or sidebands, and you just cut out the carrier frequency or cut out the carrier in the middle and one of the sidebands, leaving either the upper or the lower. And then you just focus all your RF into that. It makes for more efficient communications or a better use of power. However, the fidelity of that signal is somewhat repressed as you're not sending out more of the fidelity that is a part of the AM transmission. So FM is frequency modulation, which is another voice mode. It's very popular with VHF, UHF radios. In fact, local broadcast stations are somewhere in that VHF space. It provides high fidelity sound because it is a frequency modulation instead of an amplitude modulation signal. That came later, too. That was introduced or developed later, much the 30s, I believe, than AM. Radio modes continued. So now we'll talk about some of the digital modes. You're probably familiar with digital modes if you're getting into amateur radio. VHF, UHF radios, often there's many digital flavors of those radios. One of them is D-Star, which is a digital smart technologies for ham radio. What is that? You key up the radio. You talk into it. That microphone has an analog signal that takes your voice, turns it into analog signal. That analog signal gets converted into a digital format. So you can think ones and zeros, that kind of thing. And then there's multiple form factors that are applied at that point before it hits the radio and transmits over RF. On the other side, the radio signals are received. It gets basically demodulated or decoded, not de-encoded. There's multiple terms for that. It's not encrypted. It's encoded in this digital mode. It gets decoded back into digital voice and then back to something that represents an analog voice that gets spit out into the speakers. DMR is a similar mode. It stands for Digital Mobile Radio. It is a digital voice and data mode used by numerous companies. DMR it originated in business radio, so it predates that of amateur radio. It wasn't designed for amateur radio specifically. But, like all things, hams thought it was a good idea if we co-opted that, brought it into the fold, and that became the DMR that you see today on different radios. Multiple Chinese radios operate within DMR because it's easy for them to create radios in that space. I think that it's all open source. I could be wrong. I think that's not true. But anyway, I didn't prepare any of that information. This is just supposed to be acronym descriptions. TDMA is time division multiple access. So what this does, a repeater, for instance, using this would allow multiple channels to exist within the same frequency space that is either allocated to them for use based off of the radio service they're on, or would be like the same frequency space that analog FM radio would exist on. You can actually have multiple time channels, logical time channels, that you have multiple discussions going on at one time, which is nice. That's one of the values of digital modes, is that you can split it up. C4FM is continuous 4-level frequency modulation. This is the digital voice standard that is used by Yaesu, for instance. All right. So let's hit some antennas and shack items. So we've talked about radios, we've talked about frequency spaces, modes of operation, including digital modes. Now, let's hit some antennas. All right, antenna items or terms. Coax, not really an acronym, but I mention it. It's coaxial cable. It's the ham radio feed line that is most often used. Not all the time, but most often. You will hear the term UHF connector. I mention it because, again, it's kind of an acronym. It's a hodgepodge term referring to a period in time where it meant anything, a connector used for over 30 megahertz. That's not really the case anymore. We use it for HF radio, and we use it into VHF space. In fact, it goes over 100 megahertz. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's also referred to as PL259 and SO239. The PL stands for the plug, and the SO stands for the socket. And that's referring to the center pin, the center connector of that connector. Now, generally 100 megahertz is what people use this for, but obviously I'm using it in my car for VHF, UHF. So there's different qualities of connectors. Most of the stuff that's available for ham radio can take you up into VHF, UHF without any problem. With that said, another connector you may be referring or have seen or own or have heard of is BNC, and that is the Bayonet Neil Conselman. And I'm sure I mispronounced that. I apologize. This is a twist lock antenna connector. It's most often seen in portable radios, like my ICOM 705 features a BNC connector. It is reliable for signals up to 2 gigahertz. And what happens, I actually found this really interesting when I was researching this a while back. What happens is when you start going beyond 2 gigahertz, the slots on the BNC actually start it starts either arcing or resonating, or it becomes part of the antenna. It causes all kinds of problems. I found that fascinating because that's one of my favorite parts about the twist lock connectors, that it's really simple. Wherever you're at, you can just bam, bam, easy. You don't have to worry about keying the threads or possibly cross-threading, although that's pretty difficult to do with UHF connectors, but I thought that was really cool. So the SMA connector, the tiny little goldish copper-colored connector, sub-miniature version A. Okay, that's what that stands for. That's capable of 0 hertz through 40 gigahertz. Fantastic connector. Often used when you start to get into higher frequency type radios. I know that a lot of test equipment uses SMA. A lot of stuff I use at work uses SMA. Usually requires a torque wrench, though, to get the best capability out of it. Type N. Type N is similar to a UHF connector that was invented in the 40s by Paul Neal, and it's capable of frequencies up to 10 gigahertz. People love it for VHF, UHF, highly recommended. K6LW, and everybody who's saying, what about? I'm not even through the slide package yet. Just wait. Just wait. At the end, if I don't mention your favorite acronym, mention it at the end. We'll throw to the chat, and you guys can throw me your best acronyms, and we can talk about it. Did I skip? Oh, is that what you're saying? Did I skip TNC? Did I skip TNC? No, I didn't. I did put it in here, though. Oh, I did. Okay. Yeah, see, you make me screw up. Okay, where was I? Right here. All right, SWR. We mention it all the time. I mention it all the time. It stands for standing wave ratio. It is the measured difference between the impedance of your antenna connector and the antenna feed line connection, or the antenna. And it's measured in 1-to-1 would be a perfect match. 2-to-1 is, starting to drift away. 3-to-1 is getting to the point where your radio is not going to be happy. And pretty much anything after that point, you either need to adjust your feed line somehow or physically adjust the antenna, do something to bring that match back in. And your radio is looking for generally 50 ohms of impedance. That is HF radios, handhelds, mobiles, generally all 50 ohms of impedance. So getting this correct is something that a lot of hams strive for. We try to bring our SWR, our software, our standing wave ratio, down to the lowest level that we possibly can. And we really think that's a good idea. And sometimes for using coax feed lines, it is. Now, we could spend a lot of time on this. In fact, W2CMP New Jersey sends a super chat, confident that you'll cover snafu and foobar. I don't think I will, because I think those terms go beyond just amateur radio. But you could look those up, and those are great terms. I've used that term a lot at work. Snafu in particular. Okay, so transmatch and ATU, these next sub-bullets are related to each other. Transmatch is a transmission line matching unit. And then there is an ATU, antenna tuning unit. And there are a myriad other devices that have clever acronyms that refer to something that is either in the radio or external to the radio. But in the RF processing chain, it goes antenna, some kind of ATU or transmatch, and then the radio, your receiver. What these devices do is try and create an impedance that your radio will be happy with. It doesn't, as we've talked about in the past, it doesn't change the antenna in any way, but it does try and get in front of the mismatch that may exist in the impedance of the antenna and the radio. Now, I know there are people that draw a distinction between transmatches and antenna tuners, ATUs, and the capabilities therein. And there are nuances at play here. Many will argue a transmatch's job is to simply make the radio happy and move on to other things. A lot of QRP radios have an internal tuning unit. They're referred to as ATUs. They're also transmatches. However, the flip side of this is there are tuners that are external, that you put right by the antenna and you plug a random wire into it. Those tuners are more broad-banded in their capability of what they can match. They are more a part of the antenna system than they are simply to fix the ohms of impedance of the antenna going into your radio. So there are different antenna ATUs, transmatch systems. There's all kinds of different stuff like that. There are different qualities. You pay more for really good ones that are really wide-banded, that have amazing capabilities, and sometimes the ones that come in radios are not that great. That is a video that could be its own thing. I should actually have experts that actually know this stuff come on and talk more about it, because I have definitely had, 4 or 5 ATUs that either are external or go in a radio or whatever, and they all behave a little bit differently. Some are more for QRP radios. There's an acronym we'll talk about. QRP radios, some are just there for handling the wattage that I'm putting out of my amplifier. But they are different, and they have different capabilities, and they're obviously built differently as well. Racer X07 sends a super chat. Passed my general test and waiting on my radio equipment. All 30 plus days away. Bad time to start a new hobby, I guess. Thanks for all you do. Keep up the great work. Be on the air soon, I hope. Yes, it's quite an interesting time. There are shortages of radios, specific radios. We've talked about that on the live stream in the news segments. It probably deserves a bit of a talk on its own to discuss what's going on there. So we'll be talking about that hopefully in the future. All right, bal-uns, and I capitalized some letters to make it a little bit easier. Bal-uns and un-uns. Balanced to unbalanced. Unbalanced to unbalanced. Those are antenna pieces. Generally, they are at the feed point of the antenna, or they are the feed point of the antenna. And it is for attaching coax to either a balanced or unbalanced antenna system. I did a deep dive on a lot of antenna terms and definitions. You can find it on my channel. You can just probably search for ham radio antenna terms on YouTube, and you'll probably find it. I do recommend you go check that out because there was drawings and all kinds of fun stuff as we explain what was going on. Antennas continued. More acronyms. NVIS, Near Vertical Incidence Skywave. That is an HF antenna. This is a specific antenna, or at least a deployment of an antenna that is unique. It's an HF, high frequency, antenna that's generally 7 meters and lower, so down into the 80-meter space, 160, etc., and is lower to the ground and oriented horizontal to the ground. And that basically makes more of the RF go vertically into the atmosphere and then come back down. Generally, this is something that is used for emergency communications or where local comms is preferred. Moxon is not an acronym. It is named after the L. Moxon rectangle, which is a horizontal rectangle antenna. There's other deployments of it, but that's common term. OCFD is an off-center fed dipole, which it's also called a Wyndham, which is named after Loren Wyndham. Keep in mind that is an acronym and then also in the name of the creator of the thing. So, Yagi-Uda is not, or Uda, is not an acronym. It is the name of the creators who came up with the antenna. So try to include Uda when you do talk about Yagis because he also deserves credit. I believe it's a he. Operating terms. All right, terms used during radio operation. RST. You're going to see this on QSL cards, whether you're doing VHF simplex or you're doing HF radio, whatever it is, you're going to see it on QSL cards. It's going to say RST. Readability, signal strength, and tone. For single sideband, you're only really going to use the R and S, which is the readability and the signal strength. So when I say you're 5'9" coming into Cerritos, California, I'm referring to your readability, which is a 1 out of 5 or 1 through 5, and then a signal strength, which is generally 1 through 9 or 0 really through 9. And then there are additions that you can add to 9. You are 10 over S9, 20 over S9. And radios usually help you out. The meter will show you how strong the signals are in coming in. The third, the T, refers to the tonal quality of the CW transmission, so RST. APRS, Automatic Position Reporting System. Proper acronym, it's referring to a mode based off of packet radio, which is called AX25. Packet radio, still kind of used for TCP, right? TCP for internet. Same kind of system. That packetized data is packaged up and transmitted over RF via your radio, your handheld, mobile radio. You can also do it on HF, but predominantly it's on VHF, UHF. Now, it does use GPS, right? And a lot of people say, "Oh no, it's not automatic position reporting system." Oh, did I do it wrong? I think it's packet. It is packet. I screwed that up. I'm going to fix that right now because I don't want to mess that. There is a bit of a, I'll explain. Yeah, so let me explain what the difference is. It used to be referred to as automatic position reporting system, but it does way more than that. And I think people got the misnomer that that's all it does. It's packet. The mode at which the data is transmitted over RF is packetized data. That can include location information coming off of GPS signals or something you hand code into it. But it's for transmitting packet RF data. And already we mentioned earlier, somebody used APRS to send a RF packet message to what's called a digipeater, which ended up going to a converter that takes packet information and spits out SMS text messages with it. So it does more than position. And I should have caught that. I don't know how I caught that. Anyway, sorry about that. ATV is amateur television. This is like fast scan television. It's the corollary to slow scan television, which we'll talk about. Oscar is orbiting satellite carrying amateur radio. I actually didn't know that until I looked that up not too long ago. RTTY, RTTY is radio teletype. That's a mode of operation we use. SSTV is slow scan amateur television, which is what we use to send pictures over HF. Just a picture, just sends it. It could take minutes in some cases for a high quality picture to go over HF. There it is. A TNC, Terminal Node Controller. This is amateur packet radio. I have a TNC in my home that I have connected to a VHF radio. TNCs are really cool. I did a video on that as well. It is, again, packetized radio, used for packetized radio communication, and quite a fun thing. So deep dive that if you're interested. EME is Earth, Moon, Earth. It is literally when communication is facilitated by bouncing RF off of the moon. And as we say on the podcast, EME gets the ladies. All right, operating terms continued. People will mention ARRL, ARRL. What does that stand for? The Amateur Radio Relay League. It's the American Association representing the interest of amateur radio operations. There are other leagues. I am America-centric. I apologize. Feel free to drop in the chat, in the comments, what your favorite operating amateur league is for the country that you are in. MCOM stands for Emergency Communication. Kind of not an acronym. More of an abbreviation. ARES is Amateur Radio Emergency Service. This is the MCOM group that was established by the ARRL. Nick Smith, thank you for the super chat. I won't be here for the end of the stream, so 7-3. Thank you for what you do. Hope the queen of all the land feels better soon. I do too. I hope she's. I'll go catch up with her after the stream here, but hope she's feeling better. Now, RACES, which is the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service, is the MCOM group that was stood up by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. Those two government organizations stood up an emergency system called RACES. Amateurs can join it, and it's its own thing that is separate from ARES. The IARU is the International Amateur Radio Union, and they are the overarching body that attempts to guide worldwide radio frequency use among countries. Operating terms continued. So these are all the fun events we like to do. SOTA, S-O-T-A, is Summits on the Air. POTA is Parks on the Air. IOTA is Islands on the Air. And WMPLOTA is Walmart parking lots on the air. That one's unique. That one's specifically for making satellite contacts from a Walmart parking lot. They haven't done that in a while, but since I was going down all these OTAs, I thought I'd throw that one in there. And then WWFF is Worldwide Flora and Fauna. These are all terms you can look up. Pretty much if you type those in on Google, you will get back what you're looking for. More terms. Now we're talking about more modes of operation. WSPR, as it's referred to, WSPR, is the Weak Signal Propagation Report. It is a beacon transmission mode that I use, other people use, to test how far their signals are getting out. Oh, did I screw up the ARRL? Apologies. FT8 is the Frank Taylor design 8 FSK modulation. That's digital mode that is time-synced transmissions for the exchange of contact information. So FT8 is used to quickly exchange signal strength, time, and your location to put in your logs and make a QSO that way. Very effective down below the noise level. PSK31 is phase shift keying 31 baud rate. That is a digital mode similar to keyboard to keyboard, almost like a chat room. You type something up and you hit send and it goes out. And vice versa, you pick it up the other way. JS8 call is the Jordan Shearer designed 8 FSK modulation that's built upon the FT8 framework, but it allows for more of a keyboard to keyboard loose conversation type mode and asynchronous communication. Okay, Q codes. I think this is the last couple of slides here before we'll go to the chat. All right, not traditional acronyms. These are basically established codes that were used for Morse code transmissions. QRM Is there any man-made interference? And there is a distinction. QRM is man-made. QRN is atmospheric noise. QR Nancy versus QR Mary. QRO, shall I increase power? Meaning, should I bump up my power? Is it too low? Are you not able to copy me as well? QRP, shall I decrease power? Again, amateurs are really only supposed to use enough power to get our communication across as efficiently as possible. So sometimes you want to drop the power. Sometimes you have no choice because you're using a low-power radio. QRT, shall I stop sending? QRO, do you have any messages for me? And QRV, are you ready to receive? QRZ is who is calling me. So this is often most used when you are doing single sideband and you just wrapped up a contact, maybe it's a contest that you're in, and you say QRZ. So the stations that are listening already know you're transmitting on that frequency, or you're doing a PODA or SODA or whatever. So you say QRZ, and then the call sign's coming back in and you make another contact. QSL, can you acknowledge receipt? Yes, that is like a QSL card, right? That's an acknowledgement of your QSO. And I don't have QSO. I thought that was right after. Okay, well that's QSL is the byproduct of QSL. QSP, can you relay a message? QSY is shall I change to another frequency? And QTH is your location. So let's flip that over right there. Sorry about that. So QTH is the location you're transmitting from. There are a ton of Q codes. So if you're curious in Q codes, if you're getting involved with CW, some of these are going to be effective to know. I picked the ones that most likely to use. QSO is not as usable to me as QSL. That's probably why I skipped my mind. But I am going to go back here, so I don't want to be... We're going to fix that one right now. American. So nobody can say I screwed up. It's ARRL, American Radio Relay League. Sorry about that. Sorry. Okay, so that's my acronyms and discussions for today. Let's throw to the chat. Hey, Felix Farquharson, thank you. Sorry. Hey, I got distracted and set up an unofficial HRCC fan club. Wave Josh, love with IRC. Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate that. There are a lot of people who are like, Riddy? Didn't you say Riddy? I did say Riddy. Let's see. QRW is wife interference. Maybe it's QRS, significant other interference. That's probably already a thing. Ryan Ship, hey Josh, you helped me pass my tech a year ago plus, just about to go for my general. Wanted to chip in to keep the lights on over there. Thank you. That's 7-3 from K1WAZ. Thank you very much, Ryan. I appreciate that. ALC would be a good one for digital modes. Yeah, good one. I do have that covered in I do have that mentioned in a video on my top favorite tips on running digital modes. That actually deserves a more of a talk. Just saying ALC is the signal, the generated tones that you're running into the microphone or the input of the radio is kind of it needs more time to explain that. ALC is for amplifiers too. That's a good point. Should it have added 73 and 88? Yep, 73 is best wishes. Not really an acronym, though. I guess it would fall into Q code, but it's not really a Q code. QBR, quick beer run. Okay, good. Good luck on the general. Yes, indeed, Ryan. Good luck on the general. YL, XYL, and OM. Yeah, I don't really like those terms that much, to be honest. There's a couple of terms I'm not really the biggest fans of. YL, XYL is kind of, I think it's a little aged. OM, I'm not mad if you use it, by the way. I'm just not going to use it. And Elmer, I think, is kind of turning into Mentor. QST is good. Isn't QST like any news for me? QST or bulletin information? Gordon's Farmer's Forge says, Josh, I'm doing my foundation license here in Britain, and most of that is what I've got to study on. So the fire alarm just went off in the house. I'm not transmitting, so nobody can blame me. I called my wife. I called my wife YF. Sounds like wife and doesn't seem as dated. Okay. Dawn N5. I did say SSTV and SSTV and FSTV, and I actually explained what the difference is. If I say I want QRL, what am I saying? What is the meaning of Elmer if it did not originally mean mentor teacher? GTAN163. Elmer does mean mentor teacher. It just means specifically an amateur radio mentor or teacher. It's not used in any other hobby, but it means the same thing. I think the kids have whistles, actually. QST is calling all amateurs. There you go. Very good. Okay, that's pretty much my hour. That one actually went pretty fast. So we are going to go to the after chat, which is on Discord. The link is in the description. Again, our Discord is a big community, over 10,000 people, and talk about all kinds of amateur radio stuff. It's not tied into any one thing. We've got channels for all kinds of different aspects of the hobby, and we have a lot of fun doing it. But I'm trying something new. Today, we're going to do the the wheel of QSOs. So I'm going to spin this sucker, and then that's what we're going to go do in the after chat, among answering questions. So here we go. We're going to spin the wheel of QSOs. Oh my gosh, we're all doing Morse code. So, come to the after chat. We'll be talking about Morse code. I did not expect that one to come up. What are the odds? That's the mode I'm the least strong in. Actually, I'm poor in Morse code. So, wow. Okay. I'd love it if you joined me over in the Discord and we can have some fun. So, all right. Yeah, 73s, everybody. Where is Adam? Indeed. Yeah, spin it again. I'll go to Discord, and if you guys all say you don't want to do CW, we will. Yeah, what are the odds? 1 in 10 odds. I can count too. We'll go to Discord, and if we do a poll, we'll poll the audience there. And if nobody wants to do CW, then we'll spin it. No, I'm gonna leave it. We'll go talk about it at the after chat. John Moore says, FYI, you forgot the resale market acronyms and abbreviations. Yeah, boy, I'll tell you what. Let me get that wheel off there quick. I'll tell you what. There are so many terms. I cannot hit them all. Look, I did an hour. Do you see how many terms I hit and tried to give some context? It's incredibly difficult. There's a lot of terms. And to not get all tongue twisted, which I did a couple of times, it's a thing. It's a real challenge. Anyway, cool. I hope you join us on the after chat. We still do answer questions and talk ham radio stuff, but we'll figure out how to splash in some QSOs as well. Guys, I am Josh, KI6NAZ. If you enjoyed this, I'd love it if you hit the thumbs up. And joined us by clicking subscribe. Click that bell so I can send you a video every time I make one. I do have to do the Patreon, though. I almost forgot. Boy, that hour went quick. Thank you, patrons. You guys are the reason I'm able to do this. We're going to be putting out the vote here for... Oh, and the newsletter. I've got to get that edited up. We've got the vote coming up for patron picks. First week of the month, every month is a patrons pick episode. All my show ideas or live stream ideas go to the patrons. They vote. The one that wins is what I do the show on. Last week was portable antennas with K8MRD, and that was a fantastic live stream. Go back and watch that if you haven't. Mike is a consummate, I don't want to say performer, because he's not a clown. He's not there to entertain us. But he's got high energy. He's great talking about ham radio, particularly antennas and batteries. That's his favorite thing in the world. And for sure, yeah, totally fun doing that. So we'll do another fun live stream at the beginning of the month, particularly picked by patrons. And thank you for the activity and the support on that side. And again, the newsletter is going to go out soon too as well. Yes, what else? Did I miss anything? I broke my flux capacitor. I need help fixing it. To get back to 1985, well, you should join the Discord after chat. We've got a DIY channel that might be able to help you out. Best of 73s, best wishes. Yeah, 73 means best wishes. That's why we send it over Morse code. Da da did it da da. KMRD says it was just okay. Oh, you don't sell yourself short, bud. Elmer's are all good unless his name is Fudd. Yeah, that's true. All right, very good, very good. That was a lot of fun. Okay, I gotta say too, I'll give you my thoughts on the Arrogant Bastard. Thank you, Brew Crew. I'll do the walkout on the Arrogant Bastard here. Not too much of a fan. I understand why this was as popular as it was back in the day. It deserves all the respect it gets for being a beer that kind of shook things up, because it did offer something that was not available on the market at the time, and they were unabashed. They were unabashedly fine with the kind of bravado that they had when they came out on the market. So I get it. And actually, the restaurant's really good. Going to the tour down in San Diego, or down south just before San Diego County, is really good. Good restaurant. The brewery tour is really cool. So yeah, okay. With that said, I'll play you out with some memes. Thanks again for watching. Do appreciate it. And 7-3.